Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Bryce. I'm a forecaster with the National Weather Service in El Paso, and I thank you for joining us tonight. This is night 2 of Monsoon Awareness Week, and last night we had a great discussion on the monsoon season threat of flash flooding. But tonight we're going to change pages, change things up a little bit, and we are going to talk about lightning. And we've got a great panel joining us tonight from the weather office in El Paso. The warning coordination meteorologist, John Fawcett, is joining us. How are you, John?
I'm fine.
Then north of John in the Albuquerque office, the weather coordination meteorologist there is Kerry Jones, and he's joining us.
Good evening, Tim.
How are you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
Then going due west from Albuquerque, we have Tony Merritt in the Flagstaff office.
Hi, Tim. How are you guys doing?
Good, good. Hey, Tony, what's your elevation there in Flagstaff?
I'm at 7,000 feet right now.
Wow. That's
and it's
amazing.
Still in the mid-80s, so it's hot out
here. Then dropping a little further south, we've got a forecaster, Lee Carlisle from the Tucson office. Thank you. I couldn't. My mind went right there. Tucson. And finally, we also have Alex Tardy, WCM over at the San Diego office. Alex.
Howdy.
Very good. And finally, we have a special guest tonight, Ron Hawley from, and I always pronounce it wrong, so I'll say it, and then Ron, you can correct me. He works as a meteorologist at Vaisala.
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 Oh, Vaisala.
Yes.
Yes.
We have meetings at Vaisala.
So, you know, last night we had a great discussion about flash flooding, and if tonight I've activated our the pages that show, I believe it's called the showcase pages. So if you can get access to those on the YouTube link or on our events page, YouTube account, and I share my screen here real quick. And I will show you, we have several pages that are available. Tucson has a very nice monsoon tracking page. So if you're interested in that, you can go to their page and begin to track, see where the dew points are, see some historical information, and actually find out some monsoon statistics. Albuquerque has put together a very nice lightning page relating to monsoon, or the Monsoon Awareness Week with the lightning page. They even have a nice story from the meteorologist in charge there at the Albuquerque office. Now, Kerry, correct me, it's his brother that was struck by lightning, right?
That's right, Tim. His brother in Oregon, which is where Sean Bennett, who is the MIC, grew up in eastern Oregon. And the video, fairly short video, but it's really compelling. You know, he was with his brother at the time, and his brother sought shelter underneath a large ponderosa pine tree that was struck, and his brother was killed.
Wow.
And so we did that video. Actually, it was a couple of years ago, but I tell you, when we were recording that video, as we were listening to Sean tell that story, it was really heartfelt. And you know, Sean's made it a mission to really promote not weather safety in general, but certainly lightning safety is near and dear to his heart. So.
Right. Well, we'll that's a tragic thing to happen, and hopefully with our hangout today, some people can get some information and better protect themselves. And the last page I wanted to highlight that's on the highlights page is the Weather Service's lightning safety page, and you can find it at lightningsafety.noaa.gov. So let me pop back in here now. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And if you do have any questions, feel free to, I got it down here on my lower third, down, where's my finger? Right down here. It says, please join us at you can tweet at us at hashtag MAW2015. So that's hashtag, and then it stands for Monsoon Awareness Week 2015. So feel free to drop us a quick question on Twitter, and we'd be happy to answer it. But what I want to do now is kind of open things up, and I'll let Lynn, or I'll say let Lee and Ron trying to combine your names together. I'll let Lee and Ron talk about some of the monsoon climatology in both Arizona and New Mexico. And Alex, feel free to jump in if there's a break about some of the lightning activity that you can get there in the San Bernardino Mountains there in Southern California. So why don't you go ahead, Lee?
All right, well, thank you, Tim. Yeah, the monsoon's a really interesting beast out here in the desert Southwest. And when you look at the climatology of thunderstorm days, and by that we're talking about days in which lightning was recorded, we're talking about 80 days or so up in the White Mountains. That's the far northeastern part of our county warning area, just northeast of Safford. And that actually compares quite well to the number of days climatologically that they see out in the Great Plains. The type of weather that they, almost the more impactful thing, though, is that all of those days, or a majority of those days, are squished into a 3-month period. For us, it is June, September, but really just July through September when we start to ramp things up. And as we get a little farther west, like our southeastern portions, Cochise County, Graham, and Greenlee counties, those numbers are around 50 to 70 days. So they compare quite well to what they see out in the historically more active areas of the Great Plains, but we have to deal with this in a very short time period. So you do the math, it's almost a thunderstorm every single day, more or less, during the monsoon season here.
And of course, Lee, most of those lightning days, they come, as you were saying, during the summer, which unfortunately happens to be the time of year most people are active and outside doing things.
Exactly, and we have a lot of issues with that. Historically, our monsoon season really starts to kick off around the July 4th weekend. And unfortunately, that's a time when people are out and about, they're barbecuing, they're grilling, they're enjoying their lives, and you get a thunderstorm that pops up in the distance, and you've got something to worry about there. Absolutely.
Definitely. Hey, Ron, can you give maybe a broader perspective on lightning climatology, maybe for the whole United States?
Yeah, I gave you a map. Can you call that up?
Yes. So you just start talking, and I'll pull it up.
All right. Yeah, we've part of my position at Vaisala is to work with the National Lightning Detection Network data. It's not that one. It's the one with the map. There we go.
There we go.
And that shows the density of cloud-to-ground flashes over the country. You can see Florida has a really large number. Then other areas of the country, it gradually decreases going north and west. And can you call it up again? Off to the, there we go. You can see off to the west there, it gradually decreasing, but as Tim was just saying, you can see the White Mountains there in east central Arizona. It's a pretty high number, and they're also along the Mogollon Rim all the way into New Mexico, and then over the divide, east of the divide, there's more lightning in New Mexico. It also goes pretty strong up to the north. It drops like a rock off to the west coast, as you can see, and that's due to the cold water offshore and the subsidence and so on. So this map is 10 years, and we do this every year, and it's pretty stable. It really doesn't change much. A lot of interesting features in there.
It is, and I'll point out just exactly what Lee was saying. If you look there in kind of east central Arizona, you can see there's a little patch of orange, which is just as high as you will find in Missouri, Arkansas, Illinois. So definitely for parts of, especially Arizona, you're, like he said, you're as active as you are in the Midwest. So that's very impressive there. What else can you share with us, Ron, about lightning?
Well, for the Southwest, published a paper a few months ago in Monthly Weather Review that looked at the monsoon coming up from Mexico, and in terms of the time of year, the increase from June to July is probably one of the biggest massive increases in lightning in 1 month anywhere in the world. So it's a remarkable increase. I have a global map up there. Can you maybe call that one up just to show you what else we do?
Let me see here.
Maybe it didn't.
Stand by. Let me see. No. I don't know if I have that one, Ron. Where would it have been?
I thought I sent it to you today, but okay. So anyway, there is a maximum going south from Arizona down the mountains, Sierra Madre. Between the Sierra Madre and the Gulf of California, there is a maximum. There is one of the sharpest maxima in the world, and it creeps its way north and then explodes up onto us in July and August. It's a very short season here, just during June, July, and August, or July and August into September. And you can see how it reaches up to the north and west into Nevada and off to the west. Those are the incursions of warm, moist air from the monsoon that produce lightning problems with forest fires and so on.
Hey, Carrie, let me stop sharing my screen here. Carrie, can you talk a little bit about some of the lightning activity you've seen in New Mexico?
Well, interesting. Last year, Tim, we tracked at least a single lightning strike in our area, northern 2/3 of the state, between June 26th and September 13th.
Wow.
So I think what was just described there, it's, what is that, 50 some odd days? And so, I mean, certainly we have, within the monsoon season, we have bursts and breaks within that, that period. So, but yeah, we've had at least 1 or 2 thunderstorms for that long of a period. So I would say in our area, though, the Sangre de Cristo Mountains up in north central New Mexico and those east favored slopes are among the highest flash densities in our area that we typically have seen historically.
Wow. Hey, Alex, can you chime in on, it doesn't look like they get a lot of lightning like Ron was alluding to, but what kind of lightning activity do you guys see out there in Southern California?
Yeah, it's interesting. We certainly don't claim to have the most of anything here in Southern California except for traffic. We're not Florida by any means, but nonetheless, like we talked about yesterday, we do get thunderstorms, and even on the coast. Most of our thunderstorms are in our mountains, 6,000, 7,000 feet, and it affects people that are recreating or hiking in those areas of San Diego, Riverside, San Bernardino County. But even last year showed us that it can happen on the coast, and more than lightning striking just once, we had 4 or 5 events where the beaches and the immediate coast had lightning in July and August. And in fact, unfortunately, there was even a fatality just north of us in LA County. So imagine being on the beach, you're expecting low clouds and fog and stratus, like we call it, and you get lightning on top of that. So the problem in Southern California is low impact or high impact and low occurrence. The frequency is just not there, so people aren't used to it. And then the other thing is we get lightning in the winter too. We get lightning in April, February, December from winter storms. So we really have 2 seasons on the coast and 1 good monsoon season in July and August and early September in the mountains.
Okay. Hey, and now Tony, you're up in the mountains like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, up at about 7,000 feet. What kind of lightning activity do you guys see up there and around Flagstaff?
We get quite a bit up here, mainly around the Mogollon Rim, like we were saying before, in east central Arizona. But we also cover the Grand Canyon too. And farther up north, you have all these folks recreating around the Grand Canyon and a lot of international tourists as well. And so that's our challenge really, is to let people know of the lightning threats that do happen right off the Kaibab plateau up there, any thunderstorms that do develop. And again, a lot of recreational folks, they're camping, there's a lot of tents out there, and tents offer no protection to lightning. So that's been our main challenge really, is getting folks to be aware that lightning is a real threat, especially when you're out there camping or hiking or enjoying nature.
And Tony makes a good point, because lightning is equally deadly whether it's Florida or Southern California.
Very true, very true. Well, now that we're kind of moving on to the subject of lightning, how it can impact us, what are, I guess, who would like to answer, who's most at risk from lightning? I've seen some studies, but who can answer that for me?
It depends on what you're talking about, I think. You could look at gender, or you could look at activities. And from what I understand, and then Carrie and I both have experience, maybe the rest of you, hiking in high terrain, where you have to get up there as early as possible if you're going to summit. And you need to get down because the storms form early. Lots of folks in the outdoors, especially at higher elevations, exposed ridge lines, extremely vulnerable to lightning. And so Then there's anybody outdoor in general, you know, out recreating in our area, Elephant Butte Reservoir, things like that. And then, so I can speak at least to our area for that type of thing. And as I think it was Alex had mentioned and Tony, unfortunately, our greatest number of thunderstorms occur with the greatest number of outdoor activities. It's just the way it is. So we really, really have to be aware of the safety rules.
I could just add to that real quick. Our two most recent fatalities in New Mexico have actually been individuals on motorcycles.
Oh.
And that's been kind of unnerving. I mean, it's been tragic, really, but that's been our two most. We already one this year, unfortunately, and then one last year at about the same time. So.
Well, here I pulled up from the Albuquerque page that they had on lightning. These are recent lightning fatalities in New Mexico, and you can see that 78% of the people were outside. Only 4% of the people were inside, and the 4% of the people were in a vehicle, and the other 14% were unknown. So again, if you're inside, you're pretty much safe. It's mostly the people who are at threat who are outside, and like we said, that's mostly because during the summer people are hiking, fishing, boating, barbecuing, doing anything outside, and that's what happens is that they're not paying attention to the weather, and it sneaks up on them.
I think Ron has some stats on lightning too, Ron, about parking lot deaths being a high number. Is that correct, Ron?
Yeah. I've done quite a lot of papers on this. I've written a paper about motorcycles, one about houses, and one about everything. Several statistics. Around 80% of the victims, 80 to 90%, are male. And that's been true for the last 100 years in the U.S., and it's true all over the world except in the third world countries where women are doing labor-intensive agriculture, unfortunately. So anyway, it's primarily males, primarily younger males, 15 to 30 years old, taking chances. It's true of all over the world. I'm on the Lightning Safety Committee with Weather Service, the web page you showed before. I'm on that committee, and we're emphasizing fishing and boating in the last year or two because that's become probably the #1 killer, perhaps besides trees, being under trees. So fishing and boating is really a big issue. Actually, there was a death in the last few days again. So we really are pushing that. The other thing I want to mention is that on that website I posted the last 10 years of fatalities by state and also fatality weighted by population. And turns out Arizona, New Mexico, north to Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana are in the top 5 anyway, of deaths per million people. And the best explanation we've been able to come up with is that it's due to people not perceiving that the threat is that great because it usually doesn't rain that hard in the western states. And so how often you've been out when it's lightning and it's not raining too hard. So the perception is not the same as it is in heavy, humid situations. And so this makes a special problem in the West.
Yeah, Ron, I think you bring up a good point there, that there's almost this perception that it needs to be raining or something for you to be struck by lightning, and that's just not the case. I mean, you can be struck 10, 15 miles away from a parent thunderstorm. I've personally seen some cloud-to-ground strikes as far as 25 or 30 miles away. I know there may be some issues and error there, but that just goes to the point that it's crystal clear blue sky outside. It's a bolt from the blue, and those are incredibly dangerous. There was a really sad story last year. A gentleman out in Sells, which is just southwest of us here in Tucson, literally was the only lightning strike that we registered that day in that particular area, and it struck him and it killed him. And he was not in the rain shaft. It was blue sky right above, and he got struck several miles from the storm. Ended up unfortunately dying because of it. So that's just I think an important point to drive home, that you just do not need to be in the rain or even really very close to a thunderstorm to get struck and potentially injured or killed.
Wow. Here, I got Ron. Ron talked about this web page. This is, again, from lightningsafety.noaa.gov. And it does show that in 2014, there were 26 people who were killed by lightning. And they do break it down by state and everything. And I can slide it on down here. Again, you can see it's mainly concentrated across the southern part of the United States. And that you kind of expect that. That's where it's warmer, where people are out doing outdoor activities. During the warm season when we were expecting, or when lightning is occurring. So exactly like Ron was saying.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've talked about the threat. We've talked about some of the people that are most at risk. What can people do to kind of mitigate or kind of protect themselves from lightning? You know, when I go to schools, I like to talk to the kids. I go, what's the safest place to be from a thunderstorm, from lightning? And then before the kids can answer, I'll always say, how about, I know it's climbing around on a jungle gym, a metal jungle gym outside. And they all scream at me, no. And then I say, how about jumping into a swimming pool and swimming around? And they all yell, no. And I said, well, how about, you know, playing with my metal baseball bat on the baseball field? Again, they say no. And finally I say, well, it's starting to rain. I don't want to get wet, so I'm going to go stand under that tree. And again, the kids seem to know, the young kids seem to know that these are all bad places to be. But what are some good places to be for people if they hear the thunder? Basically, we say, what's the saying? It's when thunder roars, go indoors. So if you hear thunder, what are the safe places to be?
There's only two. Now, one of them is inside of a large, substantial, well-built building that people work and live in that has wiring and plumbing, and a lot of other metal structural members to take a hit to the building and take it down into the ground. And the other one is inside a fully enclosed metal top vehicle. All the other advice, which is anecdotal, myths, stories, mistakes, all the other ones are not guaranteed. Those two are guaranteed. So as long as you can go to one of those two places, you're all right.
Now, Ron, behind you, you have an interesting little instrument there. Can you explain what that is?
This is really this is a 100-year-old lightning rod from a barn in Indiana. I grew up in Indiana. And amazingly enough, this thing really does do the job. It has a sharp point on top. It doesn't have to be made out of metal, but it is sharp. Anything that's going to be sharp like that will be metal. And it takes it down. This is strictly for decoration. This is for decoration. It's on a wire and goes into the ground. And this was Ben Franklin's invention in the 1700s, and it really does work. So you're probably asking the question, where does lightning rods fit into society these days? They're all over the place. They're on top of airports and police stations and weather service radars and everything else. Because our homes are built pretty well, we don't have so much of a problem in our homes. Just to give you a number, 300,000 insurance claims are filed and paid every year for homes that are hit by lightning. So it's a very large number. It's relatively invisible, but it does happen. But because we have wiring and plumbing and so on, they are safe.
Now, while you guys continue to talk, I'm going to try to show a video of a slow motion of a lightning strike. So, again, let's talk more about, can someone explain why it's safe to be in a car during that you're protected from lightning?
The Faraday cage, right?
What's that?
Yeah, Carrie knows.
Yeah, it is. I think, well, the idea that you don't want to be in a convertible, so I like, Ron's idea that it has to be a metal top, vehicle. Convertible's not so good, but it is Faraday's cage, not law.
Oh, yeah, and windows up, right?
Windows up.
Doesn't matter that much. Just
Yeah,
have
that's
cage
right.
around you. A golf cart doesn't work. Fiberglass car doesn't work. You need a convertible doesn't work. You just need that cage around you. It can be a bus sitting on the ground. It's still safe. So.
The one thing I would say, I'm sorry to jump on. I was just going to say that I heard a stat just the other day that only about 10% of people that are struck by lightning are actually killed. So it's the debilitating injuries that sometimes, even though maybe you're not, the fatalities aren't there, but can you imagine what you would live for the rest of your life just with injuries from a lightning strike, which is 90% evidently of those that are struck.
Hey, let me back up this video. We'll watch it again one more time. But Ron, can you explain what we're seeing here?
Yeah, this is a famous video from a few years ago. The high-speed cameras are up to 100,000 frames per second now.
Okay.
So this is one that's coming down. You can see the individual branches as it spreads out. Step leaders are looking for about 50-yard steps, looking for somewhere to go. A whole bunch of them are reaching out, and then you can see the one hits the ground, and then the light
Boom.
up the channel. So the first one to ground wins.
Tim, you need to show it again, because if it's not on your computer and one of us talks, the video always goes to the one talking.
Oh.
So
See,
did you
I
show
think, hey, John, I think I fixed that. I think it was staying on me for the YouTube viewers. For the YouTube viewers.
It wasn't here.
Oh, quiet.
But I appreciate that. So yeah, that was that's it. I've always enjoyed that video. Let me stop sharing here. And I've always enjoyed that video because it really demonstrates what the how you can see it, and those step leaders, Ron. Can you actually see those step leaders as they're coming down?
The coming down part is about 1/100th of the brightness of the part going up, so you really don't see those. But really, you can see a whole bunch of them coming down, and the closest one to ground wins, and that makes the connection. It doesn't know what's around. It doesn't matter if it's metal. There was a video came out this morning of hitting the water at the beach, so it doesn't really matter what's down there.
And Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, but once that step leader makes contact with the ground, there can be multiple discharges along that same bolt, correct?
I have another picture there. I don't know if you can show it or not, but
Yes.
yeah, multiple return strokes. What happens is it comes down to the ground like in that video. Then most negative cloud to grounds have multiple return strokes going up. The light goes up, then the charge is lowered down, the light goes up 4 or 5 times in a video. In a sequence. Yeah, there it is. So I had a camera. I was just moving it back and forth. I'll be quiet so you can look at it.
No, you can go ahead. There you can see the different channels there that he's talking about. I'd see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, at least 10 different return strokes up the same channel there.
Right. Right. Let me show one
For
other.
the public, guys, it seems really important. If you don't have a car or a house, just stay away from tall objects. Last year, we were driving around in our car, and my daughter said a palm tree got struck by lightning on a hill. I thought she was yanking my chain because I'm a weather geek, but sure enough, we saw the fire, and the palm tree was literally burning, and it was the tallest object on the hill.
What you see, the lightning is coming down in that video. It's looking for something tall, isolated, and pointed within about 50 yards. But if there's nothing else around there, it'll just come to open ground or water. So really, you can't outguess what lightning is going to do. So much advice is oriented toward the direct hit to the head. It happens about 5% of the time. The other 95% of the time, it's ground current, contact underneath the tree, that kind of stuff. So most advice is based on the wrong assumption. Let me show something.
We got a question on Twitter here. Let me ask it real quick, and either Ron or somebody can answer it. But what is the difference between negatively charged and positively charged lightning formation? And what's the frequency and the effects of those?
Anybody? I know.
Well, Ron, take.
Well, all right. 90 to 95% of all cloud-to-ground lightning lowers negative charge. So there's a negative reservoir of charge up higher altitude than the freezing level, and it has to be discharged to the ground. When clouds are leaning over, or they're in the wintertime, and some other situations, then that positive charge is the closest thing to the ground, and it brings it down. Negatives have those multiple return strokes, like we just showed there, average of 4 or 5. Positives don't have return strokes; they just have one stroke.
Oh wow! I don't think I knew that.
And Rob, when we talk about total lightning, what percent of total lightning is actually cloud to ground? Do you know that number?
Yeah,
Great question.
The ratio of about 3 to 4 cloud flashes per cloud to ground flash, something like that. And some of the cloud flashes, I had a picture there too, we've measured them up to 120 miles long. And actually, I'm on a committee. We're trying to find the longest one. I think it may be closer to 250 miles long in an anvil of an FCS in the plains. We don't get those here. We saw some here in Arizona years ago for up to about 50 miles long. So it really is a complex thing and quite fascinating.
Ron, I have a question for you. Before you're talking about, indoors, and we all know that's the safest place to be. But when you're indoors, are you more at risk in some locations than others? Like maybe using a really close to a plugged-in appliance. One of our coworkers got knocked back many years ago when lightning hit outside and entered television and just knocked him back. Or I've heard about corded telephones, fatalities from people talking on those. Is that still the case?
Yeah, there was someone killed last year on a corded telephone. I forget where in the U.S. You're pretty safe inside. You just don't want to be in direct contact with wiring and plumbing of any kind. Yep, we have cordless phones and we have cell phones and so on. So the phone thing is pretty much gone. But with stereos and all the wiring we have in the houses these days, just stay away from that stuff. I mean, just don't touch it while the storm is right nearby. And almost everything comes through the incoming power. So.
Wow.
Yes.
Now, one thing I did want to touch on, we've talked about lightning safety and kind of the climatology of lightning, and how lightning can affect people. But one of the things that we haven't mentioned, and maybe Tony, you can touch on this, the lightning, especially as the monsoon season, especially as it starts to get ramped up, we get enough moisture to get thunderstorms going, but what happens is that it's so dry that there's no rain underneath, but you still get the lightning strikes underneath, and those can start fires.
That's right, Tim. Usually we're right at the end of our fire weather season when the monsoon's kicking off. So everything's all dry and crispy, typically. And that's actually how the Yarnell fire started with lightning. And, that fire, unfortunately, we lost 19 firemen on that fire. But it burned about a little over 8,000 acres with that. And also back in 2006, we had what was called the Warm Fire, and that was up on the Kaibab Plateau up at Grand Canyon National Park, and that burned over 80,000 acres as well. So that the secondary impact of lightning is very real, especially in Arizona when we're coming at the end of our fire weather season and then kicking off the monsoon season. So that's a good time for fires to really get kicked off by lightning.
And I know that just like New Mexico or Arizona, New Mexico's got the exact same problem. And it was 2 years ago that we had the Silver Fire between Silver City and Hillsborough, or Truth of Consequences. And what was that final total? Well over 100,000 acres.
That's right.
And then, like he said, the fire burns, and once the fire's out, then the monsoon comes in almost immediately on its heels, or even sometimes the monsoon season is what puts the fire out, and the ground has been so scorched over, and we end up with what we were talking about yesterday, a flash flooding situation.
Yep.
Yeah, in California, we have kind of both of those issues where we don't really ever leave our fire weather season, and even when our thunderstorms, they often have some rain in them. The fuels are so dry, the vegetation is so dry during the summer, and we're on the edge of the monsoon most of the time, that we are really at risk for wildfires from lightning all the way through into the early fall because of being on the edge of it.
Wow.
Tim, I would just add for New Mexico that we've had a wet spring for many areas, but we still currently have 3 or 4 lightning-caused fires. They're letting them burn and manage them in our wilderness areas, but we've had lightning fires just this season. So.
Yeah. Wow, already.
That's a good point. CAL FIRE reported to us the other day that 35 fires in central and northern California were started from lightning. A lot of that was remnants of Hurricane Blanca moisture last week.
Amazing. Well, real quickly, we're about 34 minutes into the show here, and we're going to try to wrap things up. If you have any last-minute questions, remember to tweet us at hashtag MAW2015. But we'll just go around and let everyone wrap things up. John, do you got any last words?
Well, the lightning safety cannot ever be overemphasized. And when thunder roars go indoors, you know, even that can be misleading, because if you're in an urban setting and there are a lot of other noises going on, if you can clearly hear thunder, it's probably louder than you think. And you should get indoors. And as far as the bolt from the blue scenario, I don't know if there is a safety tip there, because your life won't be outdoors hardly at all if you're always going to be indoors 20 miles away from a thunderstorm. But I think when thunder roars go indoors, if you follow that, you're going to be safe just about almost 100% of the time.
Very good, very good, very good words. Carrie, do you have anything to add?
Well, I would just add, in large part, thanks to Ron, our efforts for preparedness and safety, we've seen the difference. You know, you look at the statistics, and we've seen a downward trend in not only fatalities but also injuries. So my only, I guess, parting words would be to watch for that sign of that first developing thunderstorm. You don't want to wait till you hear thunder. When you see those clouds building over the mountains or your local area, that's the time to, take those actions. And so, as John said, when thunder roars, go indoors. We say that, but it really does make a difference.
It does, and well, I'm going to try to see if Tony's got any last words, but while he's talking, I'm going to show a graph. It only shows like the last 5 or 6 years, but even in that time frame, you can see that there's been a reduction in the number of lightning fatalities each year. And I wish I could have found a longer map back in time, and maybe when we get around to Ron, he can kind of give us some more details. But Tony, do you have any last words for us?
Yeah, one thing to remember, the Weather Service does not issue warnings for lightning.
Yeah.
Embedded within any kind of thunderstorm is actual just thunder and lightning. And so any warnings that we do issue, it has to deal with hail and wind, or a tornado, or a flash flood. It has nothing to do with lightning per se. So don't wait for any kind of warning. Like we said earlier, if you see a thunderstorm going up, there could be the potential for that first flash. So you definitely want to go indoors when you see a towering cloud outside and you see the potential for thunderstorms yourself.
One of the things that I also stress with the kids, and this is typical in the Southwest, especially with the monsoon, is that now, unlike the Midwest, where it can rain all day long, or like we're seeing in and around Houston, between Houston and Corpus Christi, where it's going to rain and rain and rain and rain. In the Southwest part of the U.S., you're going to get these buildups in the afternoon, and then it's going to rain, but most of the time, after about an hour, it's done, and you can go back outside. So it just makes more sense that if you hear that thunder, go inside and just take it easy, do something inside for a little while, let the storm pass, and then you can go back out and resume your activities. Lee, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, actually, I've got a question on Twitter a couple just before this started. It's from Matt Ches. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name there, but he wanted to know about lightning safety during photography, and that's a tricky question right there. Luckily with lightning photography, you typically want to be very far away from the storms to get the whole picture of the lightning strikes. But John hit on this earlier. If you can hear thunder, you are close enough to get struck, and you need to be extra careful when you're in a populated area, because you're not going to hear the thunder from as far away as you would, say, out in rural parts. So you may be close enough to be struck if you hear thunder in an urban area. So that needs to you always need to be thinking about that when you're planning a trip to go take lightning photography. So, that saying it holds true. Thunder roars, go indoors. It is just not worth your life from one strike, to potentially kill you. So that's I guess what I'd have here for the final words.
Great. I appreciate that one coming in. Hey, Alex, like you said, we don't think of Southern California as being the lightning capital, but you certainly get some, and people need to be aware of that.
Yeah, with the amount of people in Southern California and then the tourism, which is double, triple the population sometimes, we really need to just pay attention to the forecast, especially when we're unfamiliar with areas. If the National Weather Service has thunderstorms in the forecast and you're going to Anza Borrego State Park, you might want to really consider changing your plans. Go early in the morning Pick a different day. There's plenty of days where we don't have thunderstorms, so why take the chance when it's in the forecast?
Very true. And we'll wrap things up with our esteemed special guest, Mr. Ron. Can you give us any parting words of wisdom?
Well, a couple things. I don't know about wisdom. One of them is that there was a study a couple of years ago by someone in the Weather Service, and I'm not remembering who, but I think 80 to 85% of all cloud-to-ground lightning flashes did not occur within a warned area. So that's something that need to emphasize. So the thunderstorm warning is not a lightning warning. So the result of that is that you need to take personal responsibility for taking care of your own safety. This is not something that someone else is going to do for you directly like that. Second thing is I have here a couple of, these are fulgurites. These are what happens when lightning hits sand. And you can imagine what happens when it hits a person. Don't get them close to the mic here. They're glass. So that's why people have problems. The other last thing you mentioned is the fatality rate. I've done some studies going back 100 years. We found that in the early part of the 20th century, the rate in the U.S. was about 6 deaths per million people. It's now, per year, it's now 0.1 deaths per million people. Unfortunately, that number is only in the developed countries. I'm part of a group in Africa. I'm going there in August. There's looks like it's still 6 deaths per million people per year, with lots of schools being hit and 10 or 15 children being killed every couple of months somewhere in Africa. There's a conference about this in August. So this is, as we say, sort of a solved problem with common sense, sort of, in the U.S., but it is not in other parts of the world.
Well, still work to be done. And of course, one lightning fatality is one too many for the United States. So take heed, listen to what we've been talking about tonight. I want to, if you do hear thunder, when thunder roars, go indoors is basically the best thing to remember. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I want to thank our panel for joining us, especially Ron Hawley from Vaisala. I still can't say it right. And remember, we'll be doing this again tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is Downburst Winds, and we'll have a special guest talking about aviation safety and aviation issues related to downburst winds. So please join us tomorrow evening as we continue with Monsoon Awareness Week and talking about the different threats that the monsoon has to you and your family. So again, thank you for joining us, and hope to see you tomorrow night.
All right, bye.